Hello, Slutty Youth, Slutty Youth families. Hope that you're doing well wherever you are, whenever you are watching this video. There's a lot of things that we do in our lives that we basically do by habit. We brush our teeth every day, washing our hands before we eat, for example. You probably don't think about that too much until the last couple of years when it's really become a thing that we all have to think about in the pandemic. Unless you were a germaphobe like myself, who always thinks about washing their hands and making sure your hands are clean, you probably didn't even think about it. Your parents tell you to do it from the time that you're really little, and it just becomes a part of who you are. But in Mark 7, our chapter that we are reading today, Jesus confronts the issue of washing hands. Sounds strange why that would be in the Bible, but there were some Jewish traditions that had grown up about proper hand washing before someone eats. Now, these traditions started out as something only the priest had to do, but began to be expanded to all kinds of people and in all kinds of ways. And it says that some of the disciples didn't do this. Gross. And the Pharisees call it out, that they didn't participate in these traditions. And Jesus rebukes them and says, we don't have to follow the traditions of man. And they're kind of like, what? But the ultimate understanding here that Jesus gets to is that it doesn't matter what goes into our body that makes us unclean spiritually, because what goes into the body goes out of the body, to be disgusting, but that's the Bible for you. It's what goes into and out of our hearts that makes us spiritually unclean. And Jesus says it's out of the human heart that evil springs. Now you notice he doesn't say that human hearts are always evil. Human hearts have the capacity for good as well. But I think here Jesus is holding up a mirror to us to see that it's not from outside, from the devil or something like that, that we like to blame for all of our bad behavior. It's us. We're responsible for it. And even in our language, we try to dodge this responsibility. We say, they made me angry, or they caused me to do this. And while those things may make you angry when somebody says something that you don't like, you have a choice on how to respond to that, right? So how do we choose? How are we filling up our hearts so that what overflows from our heart is goodness? I think this is a real challenge for us today, because it's hard to discern what should go into our hearts and what is best for us. Because I don't want to make this a legalistic thing that I can't watch certain movies or I can't listen to certain music and all those sorts of things, because I think this is a really individualized choice. What is it that affects you positively or negatively? And that's different for everyone. But I think each of us is called to discern that. What are the influences in our lives that are bringing us to positive places? What are the influences in our lives that are bringing out the evil that's already in our hearts and encouraging it and making us less like Christ and more like who we shouldn't be? Right now, I'm watching the series Ted Lasso. In case you haven't seen this, it's about an American football coach who goes to England to coach English football, or soccer as you would know it. And of course, everyone realizes he's completely inept at his job. And he takes all of this in stride, because in his heart, he knows what kind of person that he is. And all of the external things that he is surrounded by bounce off of him. Now, if he knew himself well and knew that that negativity would cause him to be negative, then he has the responsibility morally to take himself out of that situation. But since he knows in his heart how strong he is, he's able to give positivity to others. So that's kind of an example of what I'm talking about with this sort of discernment. So what do we do about that? I think the most important thing for us to do is to realize that while what goes in our body and out of our bodies doesn't make us spiritually unclean, what goes into our hearts and minds certainly can come back out and can make us unclean. I know that's not a popular thing to say, because it can turn into this sort of religious test about, well, I don't watch bad movies, or I don't listen to bad music, or whatever it is. And I don't want to be legalistic about this, but I also do think we have to understand that what goes into our heart influences us, what goes into our minds influences us, and that we should be careful about that. If it's something that causes our heart to spew forth evil, then we need to not do that thing or participate in that thing until we have built up goodness in our hearts that we are able to have the goodness come out more than not. I hope that makes sense. And I know that's really hard to discern what that should be, and it changes for each of us individually. I think it changes for each of us as we go through our lives, and depending on what our circumstances are and where we're at. Some things may be okay for us for a while, and then we realize the influence it has on us, and we have to say no. So ultimately, I believe it's up to us to examine who we are and what is coming out of our hearts, and realizing that the real enemy is ourselves, that it's within us to be both good and evil, and we have to learn to choose the good, to let the good come out, and feed that natural process that allows the good to come out in us through prayer, through studying the scriptures, through coming to church and youth group, through doing the things every day that bring us closer to God, so that God can fill our heart up, so that what comes out of our heart is good. Thank you for watching today. I hope that you have a great weekend, and we will see you all soon. Thanks. Bye.